This player was truly overpowered. He spent 5 million gold coins, equivalent to 500 million yen, just to buy out the entire in-game bank, forcing all other players to submit before him. The reason was that 2 of his guild members had been bullied, and now he would make everyone regret it. Everything began on the day of the apocalypse. This is Shiro. He woke up alone in the familiar city of Akihabara. He could feel the damp air and the radiant sunlight so vividly it almost felt real. Around him, other players were panicking. They didn't understand why they were wearing their in-game outfits and kept calling for the GM in vain. Shiro tried to stay calm. He opened his status window and confirmed that he could access his skills, equipment, and items, including the Dezeneg magic bag. But when he tried to use the logout function, it was completely disabled. For a brief moment of hope, he opened his friend list and saw many names still glowing online, including Naotsugu. Immediately, he used telepathy, a voice chat function, to contact him, and before long, the 2 friends reunited. Naotsugu, who had just logged back in after 2 years, was equally confused, but he recognized his friend Shiro looked exactly as he had imagined, a sharp-eyed man wearing glasses. Together, they confirmed that they were trapped inside the world of Elder Tale. Right at the time the new expansion update, the Novosphere Pioneers, had been released. This meant their previous knowledge of the game world might now be outdated, and new monsters, items, and quests could appear at any moment. Realizing the uncertainty of the future, and that returning home wouldn't be easy, Shiro decided their first step should be to gather information and better understand this new world. While they were discussing, they unexpectedly encountered a former raid companion, Akatsuki, a skilled but quiet assassin who now appeared in the form of a tall male character. Akatsuki quickly recognized Shiro and approached him, not to greet but to beg for a potion that could change her appearance, a rare item she remembered Shiro possessed. It turned out Akatsuki was actually a girl and felt extremely uncomfortable being trapped in a body that wasn't her own. After Shiro gave her the potion, Akatsuki reverted to her true form, a petite but agile girl. Grateful for his help, she declared herself a ninja and vowed to serve Shiro as her master to repay her debt. Though slightly embarrassed, Shiro accepted, and thus the trio was formed. Together, they began exploring Akihabara and noticed that the NPCs now referred to as the people of the land seemed more populous and lifelike than before. A troubling discovery came when Naotsugu bought some rice cakes and green tea, only to find that all food and drinks tasted the same, like soggy, unsalted crackers. This only reinforced the eerie sense that they were living in a distorted reality. At that moment, Shiro received a call from Marielle, the guild master of the Crescent Moon Alliance, who invited them to her guild hall to exchange information. There they met Marielle, a cheerful elf cleric, and Henrietta, a human bard. Marielle confirmed that 18 of the guild's 19 members were currently online in Akihabara, and that similar situations were happening in the 4 major cities on the Japanese server. However, the teleportation gates between cities had been disabled, leaving everyone isolated. Amid the chaos, some guilds were actively recruiting new members. Knowing of Shiro's reputation as the strategist of the now disbanded legendary raid group Debauchery Tea Party, Marielle earnestly invited him to join her guild. But Shiro declined, explaining that he couldn't make a decision at the moment. He could tell that Marielle, though trying to appear cheerful, was struggling to stay composed in the face of the dire situation. After leaving the guild hall, the 3 of them began discussing a question: what would happen if they died in this world? In the game, players would respawn at the cathedral, but now, no one could be certain. To find the answer and also learn how to fight in this new reality, Shiro decided they needed to train. They ventured into the Forest of Eternal Twilight, an area where even low-level monsters would still attack them despite their level being 90. The battle against the spiny weasels once again proved the vast difference between playing a game and fighting for real. Entering commands while facing monsters charging at them was extremely difficult. However, during the fight, Shiro had an important realization. Instead of trying to use commands from the menu, they needed to feel the movement through their bodies. Following his advice, Akatsuki moved by instinct and succeeded. Her body automatically executed the skills perfectly. Naotsugu followed suit and unleashed a powerful shield bash. They had discovered the new rule of this world, where skill and body had become one. This was their new Elder Tale, a world where about 30,000 Japanese players and hundreds of thousands more around the world were trapped in what would later be called the Apocalypse. While Shiro and his team were learning to survive in Akihabara, A desperate plea for help came from the northern city of Susukino Surara. A young member of the Crescent Moon Alliance was in danger. In this world where death was no longer the end, a player had fallen in battle against monsters, but just like in the game, he was resurrected at the cathedral. This confirmed a truth and also brought relief: they were indeed immortal, trapped in the world of the MMORPG Elder Tale, where an estimated 30,000 Japanese and hundreds of thousands worldwide were confined. This world had become a reality where death was merely a temporary inconvenience. After a battle in which Shiro used his Astral Bind skill to immobilize and finish off the enemy, his group decided to end the day's training. Through this, Shiro reflected on the new way of combat. Their bodies seemed to have memorized basic fighting movements, allowing them to use skills and spells instinctively, much like giving voice commands, as long as they intended to fight and saw the enemy before them. However, he realized there was a vast difference between simply being able to use skills and truly mastering them. It would require far more rigorous practice, perhaps like real-world martial artists. Akatsuki offered to go ahead to scout the route back, while using the forest as a perfect training ground for her assassin and tracker abilities, such as dark vision, sneak, and silent movement. She vanished without a sound, leaving Naotsugu in awe of her skills. On their way back, Shiro and Naotsugu discussed the worsening situation in Akihabara. Order and security were rapidly collapsing. The large guilds were using their power to oppress smaller ones, and worse yet, there was a surge in PKS, or player killers, who attacked other players instead of monsters to steal items and money. The lack of a minimap and the inability to contact GMs outside the city made ambushes easier, causing peeking to become more common than ever. While passing through the Loka Hospital area, they suddenly detected human presence. It was a group of 4 PKS, 1 warrior, 2 thieves, and 1 healer. Confident, the PKS demanded Shiro and his group hand over all their items if they wanted to live. But Shiro and Naotsugu decided to fight back. Shiro quickly commanded Naotsugu to draw their attention using the skill Anchor Howl, a taunt ability that forced enemies to attack him. While Shiro used his enchanter magic, he cast Astral Bind to immobilize one target, followed by Dim Lightning, a weak offensive spell but one with a tactical purpose. Then Thornbind Hostage, which wrapped the enemy in glowing thorns that exploded for 1000 damage each time an ally attacked that target. He explained that the Enchanter class wasn't strong in direct defense, but excelled in weakening enemies and empowering allies. While the PK group focused their attacks on Naotsugu, they failed to notice that Akatsuki had silently approached and put their healer to sleep using Astral Hypnose. By the time the PKS realized their mistake, Akatsuki had swiftly eliminated the remaining members hiding in the forest. She explained that Shiro's Dim Lightning wasn't just a weak attack, the light had blinded them in the dark forest, making them unable to notice their healer had been neutralized long ago. Their loose coordination and failure to pay attention to their teammates' status led to their devastating defeat. After the battle, the group reflected on the root cause of the increasing PK incidents. Shiro concluded that the problem wasn't merely about profit, but about the lack of purpose. In a world where food, though tasteless, was always available, money could easily be earned by killing low-level monsters, and death wasn't permanent. Many players felt lost and without direction. They were merely not dying rather than truly living, and some turned to harming others as a way to fill the emptiness and feel alive. However, Shiro and his group soon found a new purpose when Marielle came to them with an urgent plea. A member of her guild, a girl named Surara, was trapped and in danger in the northern city of Susukino. The teleportation gates were still disabled, and the only way to get there was by foot or horseback, a journey of 425 kilometers. Marielle planned to send a rescue party composed of her highest level members, but Shiro quickly calculated that such a trip would almost certainly fail. After some thought, and with the support of Naotsugu and Akatsuki, Shiro made his decision. They would be the ones to rescue Surara. He said that when a friend is in trouble, helping them is the natural thing to do, and even if they lacked some grand purpose, that didn't mean they should become as despicable as PKS. This was their answer, what they could do, and an act reminiscent of the legendary spirit once held by the Debauchery Tea Party. To fulfill their promise as efficiently as possible, Shiro revealed a secret he had kept for a long time. He used rare summoning whistles rewards from successfully conquering the Hades Breath raid on the Deadly Fields to call forth griffins. These majestic flying beasts would allow them to cover the long journey north much faster than traveling by horse. As Neotsugu took off first, thrilled with excitement, Shiro allowed Akatsuki to ride behind him, and then they two soared into the sky. At first, Akatsuki was a bit nervous, but she was soon overwhelmed by the breathtaking scenery below the clear blue sky and the exhilarating feeling of freedom while floating in midair. Thus began the trio's rescue mission. 3 days had passed since Shiro's group left Akihabara. They had set out to rescue the young girl named Sarara, who was trapped in the northern city of Suzukino. Thanks to the Griffins, though limited to only 4 hours of flight per day, they had managed to cover a distance that would have taken 2 weeks on horseback. As they flew over the Tearstone Mountains, they spotted several wyverns gliding in the air, confirming that monsters still appeared in familiar regions just like in the game. Realizing that flying over the mountain range would be too dangerous, Shiro decided to carry out the backup plan to travel through an ancient underground route known as the Palm Deep. Upon entering, the group was awestruck by its sheer grandeur, a vast and complex labyrinth of tunnels and ancient mines, far more massive and breathtaking than anything they had ever seen on a computer screen. However, reality also brought decay. Many sections of the cavern had collapsed, starkly different from how it appeared in the game. Soon after, they encountered a group of ratmen, one of the demi-human races of this world. Though low-level monsters capable of spreading disease, they didn't attack. Their instincts told them the level difference between themselves and Shiro's group was far too great. Even so, Shiro noted that they could become dangerous if cornered, so to avoid wasting time and risking infection from their disease effects, he decided they should find another route. During a brief rest, they were once again reminded of one of this world's harshest realities: tasteless food. Even when prepared using menu commands, every dish, from seafood curry to jambalaya, all shared the same bland flavor like saltless porridge. Although raw ingredients such as sugar, salt, and fruit retained their original taste, combining them only produced dull salty or sweet porridge, making them long for the flavor of fast food and convenience store bento boxes. At that moment, Shiro received a telepathic call from Marielle. She informed him that she had successfully contacted Sarara through telepathy. The girl was safe and currently being protected by a kind player in Suzukino. Meanwhile, in Suzukino, Sarara was feeling extremely bored in her hiding place, lamenting her choice of the useless subclass maid and passing the time cleaning, which incidentally caused her maid level to increase. Not long after, the one who had saved and sheltered her, a catman named Nyantar, returned, bringing grim news about the city's situation. The Brigandia Guild was spreading terror, plundering and tormenting both other players and the people of the land alike. Even so, he reassured Sarara and told her that the rescue team would arrive by noon tomorrow. Back in the Palm Deep, Shiro's group faced a major obstacle when a rickety bridge they were crossing suddenly collapsed, causing Shiro to fall into the abyss. During the moment of freefall, memories surged through Shiro's mind. He remembered being an introverted person who always felt lonely, even among friends, and how Elder Tale had become his escape. Thanks to his vast knowledge, he quickly became a respected veteran player, but his fame also brought annoyance, as people constantly sought to exploit him for rare items and information, leaving him tired and frustrated. Then he recalled the happiest days of his life when he was a member of the Debauchery Tea Party, adventuring with true friends and experiencing the joy of discovery. Those memories gave him strength, and just before being swallowed by darkness, Akatsuki dove after him to save him, while Neotsugu pulled them both up to safety. When he regained consciousness, he thanked his two friends, and they realized that their level 90 bodies were far more resilient than they had imagined. Not only did they sustain minimal injuries from the Great Fall, but they also felt almost no fatigue despite the long journey. Their conversation soon revealed an unexpected fact. Akatsuki was actually a university student, which greatly surprised Neotsugu, who couldn't resist teasing her only to receive her usual swift kicks in return. Their journey continued until they were suddenly blocked by a massive rat monster, a rat maso, which they believed to be one of the new monsters introduced in the Novasphere Pioneers expansion. With no other choice, the group decided to fight, as Neotsugu stepped forward to draw the creature's attention. While Shiro used support spells such as Thornbind Hostage to inflict continuous damage, Mind Shock to reduce the enemy's evasion ability, and Keen Edge to enhance Akatsuki's attack power, she then finished off the monster with a critical Assassinate Strike. After defeating the enemy, they finally found the exit of the underground area, and their reward was a breathtaking sight: a magnificent sunrise atop the mountain. Shiro realized that although many players might have seen this scene in the game, They were the first adventurers in this real world to truly witness it a genuine victory, a real discovery that made all their efforts truly meaningful. However, in contrast to that serene beauty, at Susukino, the brutality of the Brigandia Guild and its leader, Demicas, continued unabated. He ordered his subordinates to scour the city in search of Sarara and the Catman Nyanta. The story is set in the world of Elder Tale, a realm built based on the Half Gaia project, turning it into a miniature version scaled to half the size of the real Earth, where the land corresponding to Japan is known as the Crescent Islands of Yamato. At its northernmost point lies the Esso Empire, which is also the destination of Shiro's group. As they approached the city of Susukino, they discussed the Brigandia Guild, a notorious organization even back when Elder Tale was still just a game, and now, in this real world, they thrived like fish in water, spreading terror freely. After finishing a call, Shiro explained his strategy to Akatsuki. They would meet Sarara and her protector right inside the city rather than outside, because if a battle occurred and they were killed, they would respawn at the Akihabara Cathedral, while Sarara would remain trapped at the Susukino Cathedral. Moreover, since Sarara was on the friends list of a Brigandia member, she would be tracked the moment she left the private safe zone where she was hiding. Therefore, they needed to act swiftly and decisively before the enemy could catch up. Following Shiro's orders, Akatsuki used her tracker-class skills hide and silent move to turn invisible, while the group began their rescue mission. As soon as they entered the city of Susukino, their presence was immediately detected by Brigandia members who were frantically searching for Sarara. However, Shiro's group quickly reached the rendezvous point at a place called the Corridor of Time, where they found Sarara. To their surprise, the one who had rescued and protected her was none other than Nyanta, a Catman swashbuckler of level 90, and an old comrade, a respected teammate whom Shiro once called leader during the glorious days of the debauchery tea party. This unexpected reunion brought great joy and renewed trust. With his gentlemanly demeanor and habit of ending his sentences with meow, Nyanta readily agreed to accompany them back to Akihabara, as he had no reason to remain in Susukino any longer. However, just as they were about to depart, Akatsuki reported that enemies were approaching from the north, led by a massive bear-like warrior whom Nyanta identified as Demicas, the leader of Brigandia. Without hesitation, they quickly escaped through the back route, but soon after, they were surrounded by the full force of Brigandia. Demicas mocked and threatened Sarara, planning to kill Nyanta first to crush her spirit and force her into submission. Facing an overwhelming army, Sarara trembled in fear, but Nyanta and Shiro remained completely calm. Shiro taunted Demicas, calling him Demiglace and mocking his cowardice, then proposed a duel between the strongest warriors to settle things once and for all. With subtle cunning, Shiro diverted Demicas' attention and instead pointed toward Londark of Grey Steel, a sorcerer who appeared to be the more capable fighter. Ultimately, his pride deeply wounded, Demicas roared in fury and accepted the duel with Nyanta. The battle began. Demicas, a level 90 monk, charged in with a barrage of rapid, consecutive attacks, while Nyanta relied on his agility and dual rapiers to dodge and counter. With skillful precision, he applied debuffs to weaken Demicas' attack power, defense, and evasion, gradually turning the tide in his favor. Realizing he was losing, Demicas broke his promise and ordered his guild members to join the fight. Naotsugu immediately activated his skill Anchor Howl to draw the attention of the enemy healers, while Sarara, following Shiro's instructions, began healing Nyanta and Naotsugu. However, due to her low level, she quickly grew exhausted. As Naotsugu's health neared depletion, Shiro signaled him to use his ultimate defensive skill Castle of Stone, a technique that created an impenetrable barrier for 10 seconds but had a 10-minute cooldown. Demicas and his subordinates laughed mockingly, believing it to be a desperate act, but they had no idea it was all part of a carefully set trap. During those precious 10 seconds, Sarara poured all her strength into fully restoring Naotsugu's health, and the moment Castle of Stone faded, Shiro unleashed his trump card. He cast Thornbind Hostage on Demicas, and right then, Nyanta dashed forward, delivering an astonishing series of 9 strikes in under 2 seconds. The first 5 destroyed the initial set of thorns, dealing 5,000 damage. Then, with perfect millisecond timing, Shiro recast Thornbind Hostage the instant its cooldown reset, and Nyanta's next 4 strikes triggered the second set of thorns, inflicting another 4,000 damage. Combined with weapon damage, this devastating combo completely obliterated Demicas' health bar in an instant. leaving him and the entire Brigandia Guild stunned in horror and disbelief. With their leader defeated, Shiro declared victory and announced that the route between Suzukino and Akihabara had been secured, ending Brigandia's reign of terror. Before being sent back to the cathedral, Demicles swore he would never forget the face of the villain in glasses Shiro. Wasting not a single moment, the group summoned their griffins and soared into the sky, escaping Suzukino amid their enemies' astonishment. On the journey home, Akatsuki reflected on the extraordinary teamwork she had just witnessed, a flawless strategy executed without a single word exchanged, and together, they headed home, back to Akihabara. In the world of Elder Tale, non-player characters, or NPCs, were typically lifeless entities, endlessly repeating pre-programmed lines, existing only to fulfill their designed roles within the game. However, since the event known as the Apocalypse, a profound change had occurred. After successfully rescuing Sarara from Suzukino and crossing the Lighport Channel on griffins, the group decided to make camp and rest. It was there that a groundbreaking discovery completely changed their understanding of this world. Nyanta, whose subclass was a level 90 chef, used the raw ingredients they had gathered to cook by hand without relying on the in-game menu system, and produced dishes with real flavor. A sumptuous feast of fragrant grilled meat and rich sauces, shattering the tasteless food rule they had endured for so long. This proved that in this new reality, crafting skills such as cooking were no longer just in-game mechanics, but genuine abilities capable of producing real, tangible results if the user possessed sufficient expertise. After the satisfying meal, the group formally introduced themselves to one another, during which Akatsuki and Sarara learned that Shiro, Mayatsugu, and Nyanta were once core members of the legendary raid group known as the Debauchery Tea Party. A group not classified as a guild, but rather a gathering of elite players who shared the same passion for adventure. This truth explained their extraordinary coordination in combat, as well as their possession of rare items such as griffins. It also deepened Akatsuki's admiration for Shiro. During their conversation, Shiro briefly recalled two novice players he had once helped in the past, a pair of twin siblings named Toya and Minori. By using the mentor system, a rarely utilized feature that allowed high-level players to temporarily lower their levels to play alongside beginners, he had guided and supported them through their first steps in the game. However, since the Apocalypse, he had lost contact with them, though he knew they had joined some guild. On their journey back, a sudden downpour forced them to seek shelter, and by chance, they arrived at Arb Village, a small settlement on the Arb Plateau. There, they encountered the NPCs now known as the people of the land, who were vastly different from the soulless, repetitive characters they had once known in the game. The villagers of Arb, led by the Elder Fedor, possessed personalities, emotions, and memories of their own. They had families and stories about their lives, such as the tale of how old Fedor bravely crossed a snowstorm to take his daughter-in-law to a clinic to give birth. This interaction made Shiro deeply reflect on the true nature of this world. They realized that the people of the land were truly human, they lived in harmony with their land and led their own independent lives. This raised a profound question. Perhaps it was the adventurers, with their powerful bodies and ability to resurrect infinitely, who were the real anomalies in this world. That evening, they were treated by the villagers to delicious local dishes like cheese and sausages, items considered ingredient-type foods, and thus retaining their genuine flavors, further supporting the theory about the importance of professional skills. Meanwhile, in Akihabara, a completely different picture was unfolding. The city had fallen into quiet chaos, where the strong preyed upon the weak. The twin siblings, Toya and Minori, after becoming trapped, had joined a guild in hopes of finding safety, but instead were exploited mercilessly. They were forced to collect materials all day long, and if they failed to meet their quota, they were punished. Their lives were filled with despair and suffering. In her darkest moments, Minori often wondered what her teacher, Shiro, would have done in her place. The next day, as Toya continued working, a familiar voice echoed through the plaza. It was Marielle's, announcing Sarara's safe return. In that fleeting moment, hope ignited within Toya, who ran toward the voice and finally caught sight of Shiro, the mentor they had longed to see again. Yet, he chose not to approach him, turning away instead, determined to face his own struggles by himself. In the new world of Elder Tale, guilds played an immensely important role. They were no longer just temporary groups of players, but structured organizations offering many benefits such as shared storage, private communication systems, and most importantly, access to guild halls within the guild building. Upon Sarada's safe return, her Crescent Moon Alliance Guild held a grand welcoming feast. This event became remarkable as it marked the first time everyone could taste food with real flavor, thanks to Nyanta's masterful cooking. However, this joy also came with the realization that not everyone could replicate such flavor. It required the chef's skill at a certain level, and even among those of equal level, the taste still varied depending on the individual's craftsmanship. Recognizing the strategic importance of this discovery, Marielle decided to keep it a secret for a while to prevent unnecessary chaos within the city. During the party, while the atmosphere was joyful and lively, Shiro approached Marielle for a private conversation. He asked her about the situation in Akihabara during his absence, and she shared in a rather pessimistic tone that although the PK incidents had decreased, the city seemed to be developing an underground social order, where powerful guilds like DDD, with over 1,500 members, were gradually establishing unwritten rules and taking control of the best hunting grounds, pushing smaller guilds into disadvantage. The situation became even more complicated when other powerful guilds, such as the Black Sword Knights and Silver Sword, unable to compete in numbers, decided to focus on quality by striving to level up to 91 and even 100 after the level cap had been raised in the new expansion. To achieve that, they had formed an alliance with an infamous guild called Hamelin, an organization that specialized in luring new players to exploit them, seizing the valuable X potions distributed to them daily and selling them to large guilds for profit. After hearing all this, Shiro fell into deep contemplation. He realized that the chaos and corruption in Akihabara were not the fault of any single individual, but the collective responsibility of everyone, including himself, who had chosen to stand aside and do nothing. Now, he could no longer ignore it. His thoughts were interrupted when he remembered the twin siblings, Toya and Minori, whom he had once helped. Both of them were currently in the Hamelin Guild. The guilt and remorse in his heart compelled him to act. After a sleepless night and a conversation with Nyanta about the nature of relationships and the importance of striving to create something meaningful, Shiro finally found his answer. He decided that he could no longer keep running away or blaming the system. He had to bring about change himself. Shiro contacted Minori, using a simple code system based on coughs to confirm the situation of the siblings. He promised that he would come to rescue them and told them to trust him. Immediately afterward, he gathered everyone together: Naotsugu, Akatsuki, Nyanta, Sarara, and the entire Crescent Moon Alliance Guild. He announced his plan not only to rescue Toya and Minori from Hamelin, but also to clean up the entire city of Akihabara. He denounced the cowardice, pettiness, and misery that had engulfed the city, a place where people seemed merely to exist rather than truly live. He asserted that 30,000 players was not such a large number, and that they had all been underestimating this world. They needed to become more determined. His plan began with a requirement: an initial capital of 5 million gold, a colossal sum. However, he explained that money was only the beginning. The most important thing was everyone's hope and goodwill. He believed that if all who loved this city united their strength, they could triumph. To realize this plan, he declared that he would form his own guild. Amid everyone's surprise and excitement, Shiro announced the name of his guild: Log Horizon. With a clear goal and a bold plan, Shiro began the first phase of his campaign to transform the face of Akihabara. He needed an enormous capital of 5 million gold, a figure that, for Marielle and the members of the Crescent Moon Alliance, was completely unthinkable, as their entire treasury amounted to only 60,000 gold. To begin executing the plan, the entire guild moved into action under Shiro's command. They started hunting wild boars in the Royal Garden Forest, but not to collect meat as ordinary loot. Instead, they aimed to capture them alive. They had discovered that if a skilled cook prepared animals caught alive, the entire creature could be used, yielding far more ingredients than simply defeating them and collecting items. Meanwhile, at the guild hall, Nyanta became the teacher for those who wished to learn the art of cooking. He taught them how to season food and create dishes with real flavor. Meanwhile, although Marielle was not accustomed to paperwork, she had to struggle with piles of budgets and documents that Shiro and Henrietta had prepared. Shiro worked tirelessly, drafting detailed plans, gathering information on all the guilds in Akihabara, and assessing their capabilities and manpower, to the point that even Henrietta could not help but admire the ruthlessness and efficiency of his strategy. He realized that in a world without laws, they had to create their own a new system of rules that could generate profit legitimately while keeping people willingly content. After many days of preparation, the plan was finally set in motion. The Crescent Moon Alliance opened a small food stall right in the central plaza called Crescent Burger, featuring their main dish aromatic, flavorful hamburgers unlike anything the players had ever imagined. Instantly, the humble little stand became a sensation. The people of Akihabara, long tired of tasteless meals, flocked there to once again savor the flavor of real food. They lined up in long queues, and the burgers sold out in the blink of an eye. The resounding success of Crescent Burger not only brought in a massive profit on the very first day, over 43,000 gold, but more importantly, it sent a powerful message to the entire city. It proved that creating high-quality, valuable products was entirely possible, planting a seed of hope in the hearts of Akihabara's citizens for a better life. This event quickly caught the attention of the major guilds, both combat and production alike. They realized that the emergence of real flavored food would completely change the city's economy and balance of power. But for Shiro, selling burgers and earning gold was merely a stepping stone, the first stage of a far greater plan. While the Crescent Moon Alliance was busy running the business, Shiro secretly contacted an old friend, a former member of the debauchery tea party Saojiro Seda, the guild master of the West Wind Brigade, a small but highly elite combat guild. Shiro shared his vision of a new Akihabara, a place where people could live with dignity and purpose, a place no longer viewed as a prison. He needed Saojiro's help, not for selling burgers, but for something far more significant. Though Saojiro did not fully understand Shiro's plan, his absolute trust in his former comrade, the most brilliant strategist he had ever known, led him to agree without hesitation. Shiro's plan was gradually taking shape. Each piece of the puzzle was falling into place. With the support of the Crescent Moon Alliance, the smaller guilds, and now a powerful combat guild like the West Wind Brigade, Shiro was ready for the second phase of his plan, a phase that would go beyond culinary business and profoundly affect the entire social structure of Akihabara. A revolution was quietly being prepared, and the mastermind behind it all was none other than the man known as the Villain in Glasses. In the world of Elder Tale, quests were an inseparable part of life. They ranged from simple tasks like finding lost people to grand adventures that granted valuable rewards such as experience, gold, items, magical knowledge, or crafting recipes. The griffin summoning whistle possessed by Shiro's group was also a reward from such a massive quest. After the successful debut of Crescent Burger, the next step in Shiro's plan was to raise the enormous sum of 5 million gold, the capital he needed to carry out the next phase of his campaign. To achieve this, he sent Marielle and Henrietta, the two representatives of the Crescent Moon Alliance, to negotiate with the three largest production guilds in Akihabara: Roderick Merchant Guild, Marine Agency, and Shopping Street 8. This was truly a battle of wits. Ever since the catastrophe, raw materials had become increasingly scarce as fewer players dared to venture outside to fight, giving large production guilds a dominant advantage in procurement. However, the sudden emergence of real-tasting food from Crescent Burger had become a lucrative opportunity none of the major guilds wanted to miss. Though Marielle and Henrietta were inwardly anxious, they maintained a calm and confident front as they began their negotiations. At first, they proposed that the guilds provide ingredients for their food stall, but soon after, they skillfully steered the conversation towards something much larger: the Crescent Moon Alliance's preparation for a major campaign. A challenge they could not accomplish alone, and for which they needed assistance. They subtly hinted at a new legendary quest connected to the expansion, the Novosphere Pioneers, a quest requiring an enormous investment of 5 million gold, yet promising rewards beyond imagination. To give their words more weight, they revealed that the mastermind behind this campaign was none other than Shiro, the so-called Villain in Glasses, a brilliant strategist of the legendary raid group Debauchery Tea Party and the owner of Rare Griffins. The mere mention of Shiro's name was enough to make the guild leaders reconsider. They were certain that any quest led by a man of his caliber would yield immense profits. As proof of the quest's potential, Nyanta personally served them pudding made from the eggs of a rock, a level 85 monster, a subtle demonstration that they possessed advanced and exclusive culinary recipes no one else had. Finally, to avoid creating a power imbalance, Marielle proposed that each guild contribute 1/3 of the required sum, 1.5 million gold per guild, in exchange for full access to the plan details and exclusive cooking formulas once the mission was completed. The offer was simply too enticing to refuse. All three guild leaders quickly agreed. and thus Shiro successfully secured the capital he needed without ever revealing his true plan. Meanwhile, at the Hamelin Guild, the situation of the twin siblings Toya and Minori remained unchanged. They continued to be exploited and trapped in hopeless labor. Remembering Shiro's advice about storing important possessions in the bank, Minori was consumed with guilt and self-blame for being weak and losing everything. She felt unworthy of being saved by Shiro until a message arrived from him, promising that he would come to rescue them the next day. That single promise rekindled their hope, giving both siblings the strength to endure their cruel reality and wait for liberation. Back at the Crescent Moon Alliance's headquarters, Marielle and Henrietta returned exhausted but proud of their accomplishment. They had flawlessly fulfilled the task Shiro had entrusted to them. Shiro welcomed them back with refreshments, calmly revealing that securing the funds was only the beginning. The real battle was about to begin. The next day, every guild master across Akihabara received an invitation to a meeting that would determine the city's future, hosted jointly by Log Horizon and the Crescent Moon Alliance. A confrontation without swords or spells, yet brimming with tension, was about to unfold, a battle where Shiro would face the most powerful figures of Akihabara and persuade them to accept his vision. At the same time, strengthened by Shiro's promise, Toya and Minori resolved to begin their own fight. On the eve of the historic event known as the Round Table Conference, the atmosphere within the guild hall was electric with anticipation, as the leaders of Akihabara's mightiest guilds began to arrive, including DDD, Black Sword Knights, Honesty, West Wind Brigade, and Silver Sword, representing the most influential combat guilds of all. Along with Marine Agency, Roderick Merchant Guild, Shopping Street 8, Grandeur, and Radio Market representing the production guilds, and of course, the Crescent Moon Alliance together with the newly established guild Log Horizon, acting as the initiator of the meeting. Shiro, representing Log Horizon, began his speech, but was immediately interrupted by Isaac, the leader of the Black Sword Knights, and William Massachusetts, the head of Silver Sword, who demanded that he get straight to the point instead of wasting time on formal introductions. Shiro then presented the purpose of the meeting to discuss and find solutions for the alarming state of Akihabara since the apocalypse, a world from which they might never be able to return. He proposed the creation of a council to handle the city's collective issues. However, his proposal met with skepticism and opposition from the guild leaders, especially the combat guilds, who claimed that it was a pointless effort similar to the previous attempt of forming an alliance of small guilds, which they believed only served personal interests. They declared that they had no concern for the city's condition since it was merely a place for them to sell items, and afterward, Silver Sword left the meeting. Meanwhile, at the Hamelin Guild, a secret rescue operation was already underway. Following Shiro's instructions, Toya and Minori gathered all the captive novice players and prepared for their escape. Shiro had positioned Akatsuki and Naotsugu at strategic points to provide support, and more importantly, he had gained control over the entire guild building, turning it into a safe zone. Back at the meeting, Shiro continued to clarify his true intent. He asserted that he had no desire to form an alliance for the benefit of a few, but instead aimed to improve the overall situation of Akihabara for everyone. He exposed the exploitative practices of guilds like Hamelin and compared them to the lawless chaos in Suzukino, emphasizing the urgent need for laws created and enforced by the players themselves. A heated debate broke out, and when questioned about how the council's decisions would be implemented, Shiro revealed his trump card. He declared that he had purchased the entire guild building, shocking everyone present. With ownership of the area, Shiro held complete control over who could enter or leave, including access to the bank where most players stored all their assets. This was an incredibly strategic move, turning him from a peace advocate into someone who could effectively hold the entire Akihabara player community in check. He bluntly stated that anyone opposing the Round Table Conference would be banned from the guild building, effectively freezing their assets. Faced with this threat, the guild leaders had no choice but to stay and listen. At the same time, the escape from Hamelin had begun. Toya and Minori applied the tactics Shiro had taught them, facing off against Hamelin's members. Toya used his samurai skills to silence the enemy, while Minori used defensive barriers to buy time for the others to flee. They successfully reached the exit, where they were greeted by Xiaoryu and Heen, two members of the Crescent Moon Alliance sent by Shiro for backup. However, they were stopped by Schrader, a member of Hamelin, who brutally attacked Toya. At that moment, Akatsuki appeared and swiftly defeated Schrader. simultaneously. Shiro, using his control over the area, locked all Heimlin members out of the guild building, completely ending their reign of oppression. With all the novice players successfully rescued, Shiro's battle at the Round Table Conference also reached its conclusion. He had succeeded in compelling the major guilds to take part in establishing a new order for Akihabara, with two main objectives: restoring life to the city and creating laws that would bind everyone together. And thus, the battle to reclaim the future of Akihabara officially began, with Shiro, the man known as the glasses-wearing villain, standing at the center of it all. After the Round Table Conference, Akihabara began to witness positive changes. A week passed, and the city seemed to have been reborn, filled with life and hope, all stemming from Shiro's persuasive speech. At the conference, he revealed a revolutionary secret: the ability to create items and technologies that had never existed in Elder Tale. As long as players possessed the necessary expertise, they could craft anything using the materials available in this world. A prime example was when the major production guilds, after receiving a hint from Shiro, successfully built a working steam engine in less than 12 hours. This discovery opened a new era for Akihabara's economy, where creativity and labor would be valued above all else. It also provided strong motivation for people to leave the city to hunt, gather resources, and engage in economic activities solving the problems of idleness and despair. Alongside stimulating the economy, Shiro also proposed fundamental rules to ensure security and fairness for everyone. These included prohibiting peaking in low-level areas, recognizing basic rights such as the freedom to join or leave guilds, and most importantly, acknowledging the people of the land as real human beings, deserving the same rights as adventurers. Although this proposal initially met resistance, Shiro gradually persuaded the guild leaders with his sharp reasoning and far-reaching vision. Once Krusty, the leader of DDD, the largest combat guild, voiced his support, other major guilds such as West Wind Brigade, Black Sword Knights, and Honesty also agreed to join. Thus, the Round Table Conference was officially established, an alliance of Akihabara's leading guilds united under a common goal to build a better society. Immediately after the conference ended, the first decisions were put into action. The secret behind making food with real taste was made public. A small tax was introduced for every use of the guild building to fund the council's operations, and a grand food festival was organized to celebrate. At the same time, Shiro decisively dealt with the Heimlin Guild by banning their access to the guild building and the bank, completely crippling their ability to operate and forcing their members to leave the city in misery. Meanwhile, the rescued novice players found a new home. Most of them joined the Crescent Moon Alliance, drawn by Shaoryu's kindness and bravery during the rescue, making the guild hall overcrowded a surprising but welcome development. At the same time, Log Horizon welcomed two new members, none other than Toya and Minori. The siblings, without hesitation, came to ask for admission into the guild of the teacher they deeply admired. Facing their sincerity and determination, Shiro, now as a guild master, could not refuse and gladly accepted them. That evening, under a starry night sky, the old and new members of Log Horizon gathered around Nyanta's spicy curry, sharing a warm and peaceful moment that marked a new beginning. However, peace did not last long. News of Akihabara's transformation reached the ears of the people of the land's kingdoms. They began sending envoys to investigate, and soon, a formal invitation from Eastal, one of the powerful kingdoms, arrived at the Round Table Conference. In the days that followed, life in this new world continued to move forward. During a training session for Log Horizon's new members, Toya and Minori, under the strict yet caring guidance of Naotsugu and Akatsuki, gradually grew accustomed to their roles within a party. They learned the importance of coordination and understanding each class's strengths and weaknesses. Meanwhile, at Log Horizon's headquarters, Shiro continued his tireless research. He was not only searching for a way to return to the real world, but also striving to understand the true nature of this new one. He experimented with his scribe skill, hoping to create things that transcended the limits of the game, just as the chefs and craftsmen had already done. The unexpected peace was broken by an emotional outburst from Marielle, who had grown exhausted from paperwork and longed for a summer vacation. To resolve this and simultaneously fulfill the Round Table Conference's commitment to training new players, Shiro quickly devised a solution, organizing a summer training camp for all adventurers below level 40 at the seaside town of Chaoshi in the Zantleaf region. This plan not only satisfied Marielle's wish, but also created an opportunity for the new generation of players to learn and grow in a safe, structured environment. While Akihabara was buzzing with excitement preparing for the camp, another major event occurred. A delegation from the League of Free Cities of Eastal, one of the most powerful factions of the people of the land, arrived in Akihabara. They carried an official invitation from Lord Sergiet Cohen, requesting that the Round Table Conference send representatives to a Council of Lords and a ball to be held the following month. This marked the first official contact between the adventurers and the political forces of the people of the land, posing an extremely complex diplomatic challenge for the Round Table. They had to weigh the chance to obtain valuable information about this world against the risk of being entangled in the political schemes of the native powers. After intense deliberation, the Round Table decided to send a delegation consisting of Krusty as the council's official representative, Michitaka representing the production guilds, and Shiro serving as an intelligence analyst. Henrietta also chose to accompany them, officially as an observer, but in truth to take care of Akatsuki. The delegation's destination was the Eternal Ice Palace, the venue of the ball, a magnificent structure built entirely from magical ice. There, they met and conversed with Lord Sergiet Cohen, the head of the Eastal League. Through this encounter, Shiro realized that the social structure of the people of the land was strikingly similar to the guild system of adventurers, where power was distributed and decisions were made through discussion. However, the atmosphere at the ball was tense. Both sides remained cautious and observant, seeking to gather information about each other without revealing too much. Meanwhile, at the summer camp in Chaoshi, the new players were enjoying the fresh sea breeze and preparing for their next challenge, a dungeon expedition called the Lagranda Forest. This would be a true test of everything they had learned, and more importantly, they would have to face it without direct help from their instructors, an important lesson in independence and trust among teammates, a lesson Shiro had carefully noted and entrusted to Minori. In the world of Elder Tale, dungeons are special areas where battles against monsters take place in confined spaces, requiring complex teamwork. At the Eternal Ice Palace, amidst the solemn atmosphere of the ball, the Round Table's delegation faced another kind of battlefield, a tense diplomatic struggle. Krusty, as the official representative, skillfully declined dance invitations to gain more time conversing with Lord Sergiet, while Shiro, despite his reluctance, was pushed onto the dance floor to open the event. Fortunately, Henrietta, with her bard class, became a perfect dance partner, gracefully guiding Shiro through each step, while explaining the role of a bard, a support class that uses music to strengthen allies and weaken enemies through lingering effects. While Shiro and Henrietta were dancing, Akatsuki was unexpectedly dragged away by a group of children from the people of the land to play hide and seek. In that fleeting moment of joy, she realized the difference between herself, an adventurer, and ordinary children. At the same time, Minori was growing anxious about the upcoming dungeon expedition, so she contacted Shiro. He reassured her by reminding her of the fundamental principles of party combat he had taught her, emphasizing that she was never alone and that level was not everything. That brief conversation gave Minori great courage. The next day, Shiro and the delegation discovered that their new cooking method had begun to spread throughout the people of the land community, a sign of the adventurers' growing influence. Shiro explained that to avoid causing negative effects, they needed to better understand this world. He also analyzed the complex political situation of the Eastal League, where noble families were trying to win over the adventurers to their side. They also realized that the quest system had changed since the apocalypse, causing unpredictable consequences, especially for new players. Meanwhile, at the summer camp in Lagranda Forest, Minori's group, including Toya, Isuzu, Sarara, and an arrogant sorcerer named Rundle Housecode, was preparing for their first expedition. Though initial disagreements arose due to their clashing personalities, they eventually entered the dungeon. Their first battle against a group of 3 skeletons went relatively smoothly. Toya, serving as the samurai tanker, skillfully drew the enemy's attention with long-range attacks, while Rundle House demonstrated the destructive power of a sorcerer, and Isuzu, as a bard, used her support songs to amplify their magical strength. However, Rundle House's arrogance and inexperience quickly led to disaster. He failed to notice the hidden skeletal archers who had taken aim at him, and by using a powerful spell, he drew the attention of every enemy onto himself. Their formation collapsed completely, and with the others unable to heal in time, they had no choice but to flee in chaos and defeat. At the same time, at the ball, Krusty politely yet firmly declined the invitation of a certain lord and instead approached Princess Lenisha L. Cohen, granddaughter of Lord Sergiat and one of the most important figures in Eastle, inviting her to dance. This was a significant diplomatic move. In the world of Elder Tale, besides the adventurers and the people of the land, there also existed demi-human races such as goblins, cruel, and numerous creatures. Although individually weaker than a mid-level adventurer, their strength lay in their overwhelming numbers and diversity. They primarily occupied the northeastern regions of the Yamato archipelago. Meanwhile, at the Eternal Ice Palace, the Round Table's delegation faced a dense schedule of banquets and meetings with Eastle's lords. They decided to split up to attend. Shiro would participate in the Academic Council meeting, Michitaka would attend Lord Dart's banquet, and Krusty would join the gathering of young knights. Confident in his ability to handle flattery, Krusty armed himself with an exceptionally sturdy shield, none other than Princess Lenisha herself, whom he had cleverly turned into his companion throughout the conference. Lenisha, a princess with a melancholy yet inherently lazy nature who wished for nothing more than to laze around all day, initially found Krusty's presence extremely bothersome, believing him capable of reading her thoughts. However, with his insight and psychological acumen, Krusty quickly turned the situation to his advantage. He proposed a mutually beneficial arrangement: they would appear together, providing the perfect excuse to avoid tedious social gatherings while serving as a shield against the scrutiny of other lords and nobles. In a friendly match against the Knights of Eastle, Krusty displayed the overwhelming power of a level 90 adventurer. He easily defeated all his opponents and earned his reward, the honor of escorting Princess Lenisha at the evening banquet. During their private conversations, Krusty gradually broke through Lenisha's shell. He compared her to his younger sister in the real world, who shared similarly lazy habits, and admitted that her presence eased his homesickness. Through their exchanges, he subtly illustrated the fundamental difference between adventurers and the people of the land: freedom. The freedom to do whatever one desired, to sleep whenever one pleased, and to travel anywhere, though that freedom also demanded great determination and responsibility. What began as a relationship of mutual exploitation slowly transformed into one of understanding and empathy. Meanwhile, at the summer camp, Minori's group, after their first failure, continued to struggle in their attempt to conquer the La Grande Forest dungeon. They failed repeatedly, weighed down by self-blame and helplessness. Isuzu even began to doubt her own strength, wondering if she was too weak and lacked potential. Despite her own anxiety, Minori strove to remain steadfast, believing this was a trial they had to overcome on their own. At the same time, the battle of wits between the Round Table Conference and the Eastle League continued. After realizing the adventurers' immense power and potential, especially in technology and economics, the lords sought every opportunity to win them over, offering noble titles and promising great benefits, such as requests for assistance in developing maritime transport technology to counter monster threats. Shiro and his delegation recognized this as a sophisticated trap and knew they had to be careful not to get entangled in Eastle's internal political disputes. They needed to establish clear rules for cooperation between the two sides. That was also why Shiro sent Akatsuki to gather intelligence. She discovered that although the lords desired cooperation, they were also deeply wary and fearful of the adventurers' strength, arguing among themselves over whether to handle the situation with diplomacy or force. On the final night of the conference, as Shiro stood alone on the balcony in contemplation, he encountered a mysterious mage who introduced himself as Regan of Merrill Lake, a man who seemed to know far too much about the nature of the apocalypse and the deepest secrets of this world. Within the solemn atmosphere of the Eternal Ice Palace, a secret meeting took place between Shiro, Akatsuki, and Regan, the magical scholar and inheritor of the title Sage of Merrill Lake. Regan revealed a startling hypothesis that the event known as the Apocalypse was the third activation of a world-class magic called World Fraction. The first occurred 350 years ago, when the princesses of the Elf race, driven by vengeance, used the spell to create demi-human races from wandering souls, plunging the world into an age of darkness. The second occurred 240 years ago, when divine summoning magic was used to bring the adventurers' messengers of the gods into this world to battle the demi-humans. Regan explained that according to the soul theory, life consists of two types of energy: psyche, or the soul equivalent to MP, containing consciousness and personality and anima, or the body equivalent to HP, holding memories stored in the brain. When a person of the land dies, both their anima and psyche dissolve completely. However, an adventurer possesses a resurrection mechanism similar to that of the demi-humans, allowing their psyche to return to the cathedral and reconstruct their anima. Yet this process is imperfect, resulting in the loss of a portion of their experience, or in other words, a part of their memory. This implies that each time an adventurer dies, they lose fragments of their memories, possibly even those connected to the real world. Meanwhile, at the summer camp in Chaoshi, after a series of consecutive failures, the atmosphere within Minori's group had grown unbearably heavy. Self-blame and mutual accusations pushed them to the brink of collapse. Toya, Rundle House, Isuzu, and Sarara were all engulfed in frustration and helplessness. Despite their best efforts, they could not understand why they continued to fail even the simplest challenges of the dungeon. Minori, who had been trying her best to lead the group according to Shiro's teachings, also felt confused and anxious. She sensed that she had missed something vital, a core element of group combat that Shiro had never explicitly mentioned. The next morning, before they prepared for yet another likely futile attempt, Minori gathered her courage and suggested that they stop entering the dungeon for a while. She proposed that instead of charging headlong into failure, they should take time to sit down, talk, and truly understand one another. She had realized that what they lacked was not strength or tactics, but genuine trust and connection. They were simply a group of strangers thrown together, not real friends or comrades. Only when they could trust and rely on each other could they become a true team, one capable of overcoming any challenge together. Meanwhile, at the palace, after finishing his conversation with Rigan, Shiro and his delegation returned to their political negotiations. They faced enticing yet dangerous offers of cooperation from the lords, each with their own agendas and schemes to draw the adventurers' power to their side. But with his deeper understanding of the world's nature and its hidden dangers, Shiro decided to maintain a neutral and cautious stance. He knew that before making any critical decisions, they needed to understand the world and their own place within it. He also couldn't stop thinking about what Rigan had revealed: the risk of losing memories with every death. A truth that could completely change how adventurers perceived life and death in this new world. He knew he couldn't let anyone else know this, at least not until he found a solution. After their initial failures, the group of new players at the training camp, under Minori's leadership, finally made a breakthrough. They realized that the root cause of their defeats wasn't in individual skill or tactics, but in their lack of understanding and trust. Minori boldly suggested they spend time talking to learn about each other's strengths, weaknesses, preferences, and fighting habits. The discussion began awkwardly, but as everyone slowly opened up, they discovered things they had never known about one another. Toya explained the role of a samurai tanker and the importance of drawing enemy attention, while Rundle House or Ruddy shared about his powerful spells and their accompanying vulnerabilities. Isuzu revealed a unique support skill called Coward's Fugue, which could reduce perceived enemy damage, providing a key tactical advantage. Through this conversation, they realized that only by combining each individual's strength could they form a truly solid team. With this newfound understanding, they returned to the Lagranda Forest dungeon with renewed spirit. This time, Minori, with the confidence and knowledge she had learned from Shiro, commanded the group with excellence. She assigned clear roles: Toya as the front-line tank drawing and holding enemies, Sarara as the main healer, Rudy and Isuzu as the main damage dealers, while she oversaw the battlefield and provided support when needed. As a result, they easily defeated the enemies that had once forced them to flee. They moved with coordination, attacked in harmony, and supported one another seamlessly. This victory not only granted them experience and loot, but more importantly, it brought them joy and confidence. They had learned the most valuable lesson of teamwork, trust, and had become true friends. Meanwhile, at the Eternal Ice Palace, the delegation of the Round Table Conference, despite facing complex political negotiations, had achieved certain results. Though exhausted by the long meetings, Shiro never forgot to devote time to study and research this world further. He continued practicing his scribe skills, hoping to create magical items that could alter the course of events. The seemingly unrelated events at the palace and the training camp were suddenly interrupted by a large-scale demi-human invasion. A massive army of Sahuagin fish-like monsters unexpectedly emerged from the sea and attacked the Chaoshi camp area. Naotsugu and the other instructors quickly organized a defense, while Xiaoryu rushed into battle to protect everyone and ordered others to warn the groups still in the forest. The situation became extremely dire. As the invasion spread across the entire Zandleaf Peninsula, the adventurers participating in the training camp were thrown into a real battle for survival. Though merely a makeshift group, they demonstrated remarkable coordination to hold back the enemy, buying precious time for the new players to retreat to safety. Meanwhile, at the Eternal Ice Palace, news of the invasion swiftly arrived. Through a brilliantly arranged emergency telepathic conference, Shiro connected all key members of the Round Table, bringing them together despite being scattered in different locations, to confront the crisis as one. He explained that this invasion was a direct consequence of the Return of the Goblin King event, a recurring in-game event that, if ignored by players, would trigger the rise of a powerful goblin army. Ever since the apocalypse, no one had intervened, meaning that this goblin force had grown stronger than ever before. Shiro also revealed a troubling truth that the military strength of the people of the land, including the Eastal League, was insufficient to resist the invasion, and the status of the Izumo Knights, a legendary in-game army, remained unknown, facing an inevitable large-scale war and the possibility of devastating losses, not only for adventurers but also for the mortal people of the land, who could die permanently. The atmosphere in the meeting grew increasingly tense. At the palace, Princess Lenisha received grim news that her father would have to return to Mayhama to lead the city's defense against the goblin army, while she and her grandfather must remain to continue the conference and maintain political stability. This situation forced Lenisha into a difficult position, compelling her to confront the responsibilities she had always tried to escape. Back at the training camp, the survivors of the initial attack regrouped at the school grounds, where fear and confusion spread among everyone. Naotsugu and the other instructors did their best to calm them while analyzing the situation, concluding that the goblin army's next target was likely the town of Chaoshi, a town without walls, vulnerable to assault. A heated argument broke out among the new players. One side argued for retreat to save their lives, while the other, led by Toya, insisted they couldn't abandon innocent people. In that critical moment, Minori proposed a daring plan. Instead of defending an indefensible town, they should take the initiative to strike first, disrupt the enemy's plans, and seize the advantage. It was a reckless decision, but it also showed the growth and sense of responsibility of these young adventurers. They had realized that as adventurers, they possessed power, and with that power came the duty to protect the weak, even when no one asked them to, and even when there was no reward. At the same time, Shiro also made a decision. He shared a secret he had just discovered. Every time an adventurer dies, they lose a portion of their memories from the real world. This revelation caused a huge shock, but Krusty firmly declared that fear was not an option, and that inaction out of fear of risk was far worse than death itself. He shared his own experience, admitting that he had already lost some of his memories, yet that did not stop him. Krusty's words reignited everyone's courage, helping them overcome fear and focus on finding a solution. Naotsugu and Nyanta, though fighting on a different battlefield, also arrived to support the new players, and as adults, they respected Minori's decision. They granted her the freedom to carry out her plan, understanding that freedom is a privilege of adventurers, one that comes with responsibility and determination, and they believed Minori was ready to shoulder that responsibility. In the thick darkness that covered the battlefield, the young adventurers under Minori's command launched a nighttime assault on the goblin army. The plan originated from her own decisiveness, as she believed that taking the initiative to attack rather than passively defending would throw the enemy into confusion and disrupt their coordination, slowing their advance and making subsequent assaults easier to repel. Toya charged ahead to lure two enemy squads into a trap, while Minori, her vision enhanced by a magical eye potion borrowed from Naotsugu, could see clearly in the darkness like a cat and commanded the entire battle from behind. She ordered Ruddy to use small-scale spells to restrain the enemy and conserve energy for stronger attacks, while directing Isusu to use supportive songs to amplify the team's strength. Everything seemed to be proceeding perfectly, a testament to their growth and teamwork. Meanwhile, in the lavish Eternal Ice Palace, another kind of battle was taking place, a tense diplomatic struggle. The lords of the Eastal League, in a secret meeting without the adventurers' presence, revealed their despair and fear. They realized that Chaoshi could not hold out for long, and that the goblins' next targets might be Tsukuba or even Mayhama. Some even suspected that the invasion was a scheme by the adventurers themselves to weaken them. But above all, a deeply alarming truth was being carefully concealed. The Izumo Knights, the legendary military force they had always relied upon, had vanished without a trace. This left them in a desperate position, forcing them to consider a ruthless strategy, sacrificing one of their cities as bait to create an opportunity for a full-scale counterattack. After the first battle, Minori's group enjoyed a brief moment of rest. Together, they shared the first piece of loot they had earned through their own strength, a pair of mage gloves, and without hesitation, they all agreed to give it to Reddy, the only one who could use it. That moment further deepened their friendship and trust. They shared their fears of fighting in the dark, but at the same time reinforced their resolve that protecting those in need was the true mission of an adventurer. Back at the official conference, the atmosphere grew tense as the lords began to pressure the Round Table delegation. With arrogance, they claimed that fighting the goblins was a divine duty, a blessing from the gods that the immortal adventurers must fulfill. Such conceited words enraged Michitaka, who could no longer contain his fury. He bluntly declared that they were not citizens of the Eastal League and had no obligation to obey anyone's orders, that they were not disposable pawns to be sent into battle simply because they were immortal. For none of the lords knew the painful truth that every time they died, the adventurers would have to pay a terrible price. The heated confrontation brought the negotiations to a complete deadlock until, at that very moment, someone no one expected appeared. Princess Linecia. Long regarded as a lazy and timid girl, she stepped into the grand hall with unwavering determination in her eyes. She declared that she herself would go to Akihabara to call upon a volunteer army. Her words shocked everyone present and shattered the impasse in the negotiations. She openly condemned the cowardice and disrespect of the lords, asserting that asking for help from free people like the adventurers must come from sincerity and respect, not coercion or deceit. To prove her resolve, she revealed the secret the lords had desperately tried to conceal: the disappearance of the Izumo Knights. Linecia firmly stated that she would go to Akihabara, stand on the streets, and speak to every adventurer in person, seeking those willing to help through their own freedom and will. Her speech, filled with courage, completely changed the situation, even though she collapsed from exhaustion immediately afterward. Shiro couldn't help but feel deep admiration for the princess's resolve. He realized that in a world where adventurers are beings of freedom, only genuine respect and heartfelt persuasion could move them. And it was this once lazy, timid princess who might be the one to save the Eastal League from its own paralysis. When Princess Linecia first set foot in the bustling city of Akihabara, she couldn't hide her astonishment and a tinge of fear at such a completely foreign world. But she quickly reassured herself that this was her own decision, and she could not allow herself to appear weak. After ensuring her safety, Krusty temporarily returned to his guild headquarters, entrusting the princess to Shiro and Akatsuki, who would accompany and support her in her first steps in the city. Meanwhile, life in Akihabara went on as usual. Michitaka found things somewhat dull without Shiro and the princess around, while Saojiru continued to be surrounded by the female members of his guild, who admired him with unrelenting enthusiasm. Shiro understood that for Linecia's appeal to have the greatest impact, first impressions were crucial. Thus, he brought her to meet Karishin to prepare for her speech before all the adventurers. Together, they selected a Valkyrie armor set that was both magnificent and dignified, along with a sword not for battle, but to symbolize determination and strength. The sudden appearance of a true princess in the heart of the city quickly drew everyone's attention. They were curious, captivated, and buzzing with excitement. While waiting, Linecia even tasted the famous crescent burger for the first time, a flavor of this new world that filled her with surprise and delight. After Akatsuki and others helped her change, Linecia emerged in a shining silver armor, an image both beautiful and resolute that instantly won everyone's admiration. Shiro had gathered a massive crowd at the plaza and quickly went straight to the point, announcing the emergence of 20,000 goblins in the north and the grave threat they posed to the Eastal League. He explained that although Akihabara could defend itself, abandoning Eastal would bring catastrophic losses to the people of the land. Yet he also emphasized that there would be no direct material reward for helping them. After presenting this difficult reality, he introduced the star of the day, Princess Linecia. In her gleaming Valkyrie armor, she stepped onto the stage, introduced herself, and began a heartfelt speech. She did not hide Eastal's weakness. She openly admitted that the lords had behaved cowardly, intending to exploit and force the immortal adventurers to fight on their behalf. She publicly revealed the secret behind the disappearance of the Izumo Knights and, on behalf of everyone, bowed her head in the most sincere apology. She said that she possessed nothing of value to repay them, that there was no price worthy of their freedom, But as a member of the Cohen family, she was bound by duty to protect the city of Mayhama. And though she herself was nothing more than a weak, lazy girl, a mere decoration, she declared that she would fight. That firm declaration moved the hearts of thousands of adventurers gathered there, and then she made her final plea, a call not based on duty or reward, but on goodwill and their very own freedom. She begged them to fight alongside her. Lanicia's speech succeeded beyond imagination. The cheers of support roared across the plaza. The adventurers, who had longed for a goal, a cause to believe in, were completely captivated by the princess's courage and sincerity. Immediately, Krusty stepped forward and announced the formation of an expeditionary army, with himself as the commander and Shiro as the strategist. A massive recruitment campaign began. Afterward, while Lanicia was still bewildered by what she had just done, Shiro, Krusty, and Michitaka quickly drew up an action plan. They decided to prioritize speed. An elite force of about 1,200 volunteers would be rapidly transported to Narashino port aboard a prototype steamship named Ossipete, a new invention by the production guilds. Meanwhile, Shiro would head to Midront Riding Park to establish a strategic command center. However, Lanicia's unilateral actions sparked political concerns. Lord Sergiot Cohen, her grandfather, met with Michitaka, worried that the other lords might suspect the Cohen family of making secret deals with Akihabara to strengthen their own power. But after understanding the situation, he made an extremely wise proposal. Instead of trying to merge the Round Table Conference into the Noble Alliance, he suggested signing a non-aggression pact and a trade treaty, recognizing Akihabara as an equal power, a historic diplomatic step. Meanwhile, at the summer camp, after successfully repelling the first wave of attacks, the new players were warmly welcomed by Marielle. Neotsugu realized that it was the younger generation, those unbound by the old mindset of a mere game, who could most easily accept the people of the land as real human beings and were willing to fight to protect them. Back in Akihabara, all preparations were complete. Krusty was ready to lead his army into battle, and with his final order, kill them all, the first expedition of the Akihabara adventurers officially began. The vanguard forces, under Krusty's command, after landing at Narashino port, swiftly advanced west toward Lake Kasumi to confront the Goblin vanguard head-on. The battle was fierce and intense, but with superior leadership and the overwhelming strength of high-level adventurers, Krusty's army completely dominated the enemy, breaking through their lines with ease. Even when the giants arrived to reinforce the goblins, they did not falter but pressed the attack relentlessly. However, amidst the chaos of battle, Princess Lanicia noticed something strange, though Krusty seemed to revel in the fight. His eyes carried a deep sadness, a loneliness that could not be expressed in words. Meanwhile, at the Strategic Command Center established at Midront Riding Park, Shiro was working tirelessly. They had successfully set up a complex telepathic communication network, allowing Shiro to coordinate all the units fighting across the various fronts smoothly. Yet Shiro was also aware of a difficult problem. Defeating the goblin army was not the ultimate goal. More importantly, they had to prevent the goblins, once defeated, from scattering and attacking the villages of the people of the land. Therefore, his plan was to corner and lure all the goblin forces to a single point, and the key location of this entire strategy was the town of Chaoshi, where the new players were stationed. At the same time in Chaoshi, the new players were facing their own trial. An army of Sahiwajin, fish-like humanoid monsters numbering in the thousands, had suddenly appeared and surrounded the town. Confronted with an overwhelming and ferocious enemy, Marielle stood up and called upon everyone to fight together to protect the town. The battle at Chaoshi erupted, and in that fierce struggle, Minori's group once again shone brightly. They not only fought bravely but also demonstrated remarkable growth in their coordination and tactical execution. Toya and Sarara had become far stronger. Isuzu and Ruddy fought in perfect, astonishing harmony, and most of all, Minori herself brilliantly employed the full control combat style once used by Shiro, a strategy requiring broad situational awareness, precise energy calculations down to the last percentage, and the ability to predict the battle's flow up to 30 seconds ahead. Though Minori could only foresee about 10 seconds into the future, she proved that she was steadily closing the gap between herself and the teacher she deeply admired. However, the battle became increasingly brutal as a sudden rainstorm arrived, followed by the appearance of two dire wolves, driving Minori's group into an extremely dangerous situation. The enemy's attacks were so fierce that their healing abilities could no longer keep up. When Toya was on the verge of collapse, Rudy made the decision to sacrifice himself. drawing the wolves' attention to create an opening for his teammates. His brave act allowed them to turn the tide of battle, but the cost was unbearable. Rudy had fallen, and then, a shocking truth was revealed: Rudy was a person of the land. That meant his death was permanent. All of Sarara's and Minori's revival attempts were in vain. Pain and helplessness engulfed the entire group. Through tears, Isuzu confessed that she had known this secret all along but couldn't bring herself to tell anyone, fearing it would shatter Rudy's dream of becoming an adventurer. Confronted with this cruel truth, Minori made one final decision. She mustered all her strength and cried out a desperate plea for help to Shiro, a call that transcended the world's very laws. And when Shiro heard that cry for help, it struck him to his core. Even though he was in the midst of coordinating the war, he didn't hesitate to set everything aside to answer his student's plea. He immediately left the command post, entrusted operational control to Karashin, and urgently rode his griffin toward Chaoshi. Countless thoughts filled his mind. What could he possibly do in this unreasonable world, especially when Minori needed him now more than ever? As he flew toward the battlefield, Shiro quickly assessed the situation. He knew that normal resurrection spells did not work on the people of the land, since their souls would dissipate once their bodies were destroyed. However, based on Regan's hypothesis that if the body could be restored in time, the soul might be preserved, Shiro instructed Minori and Sarara to continuously cast revival spells to delay Rudy's body from collapsing. It became a race against time. While Rudy's body was barely maintained, his soul continued to fade. Amidst the chaos of the ongoing battle, Shiro swiftly put a plan into motion, a new kind of magic that he himself had created. He had prepared in advance a contract written with the most refined magical materials, the paper of the Fairy King and ink made from the eye of the Time Dragon, in order to perform a ritual that had never been attempted before. Upon arriving, Shiro instructed everyone to form a defensive circle, and with Isuzu's song providing energy recovery, he began the ritual. First, using his enchanter ability, Mana Channel, he absorbed a fragment of the souls of every member present, including his own, and then transferred a portion of that combined soul energy into Rudy. He then used a rare resurrection incense to forcibly reconnect Rudy's soul and body, turning him into a semi-undead state for 3 minutes. Rudy awakened, but he knew his time was short. Calmly accepting his fate, he prepared to say goodbye, but Shiro refused to let him. He scolded Rudy for his lack of resolve, telling him that what he learned in the dungeon wasn't tactics, but the will to survive. Then, Shiro presented a contract, a magical document capable of altering the world's very laws. The contract declared that Rudy would become a member of the Log Horizon Guild, and in exchange, he would be granted the status of an adventurer. It was an incredibly dangerous decision, but Rudy didn't hesitate. He firmly stated that his greatest wish was to become an adventurer, someone who could help others. With Isuzu's help, Rudy signed the contract, and immediately after, he collapsed once more. Shiro explained that to complete the pact, Rudy needed to die one final time, and afterward, he would revive at the cathedral as a true adventurer. Meanwhile, Krusty's vanguard forces continued their advance, annihilating the Goblin General's army and clearing the path for the final battle against the Goblin King. Back in Chaoshi, after a long and exhausting fight, the expeditionary force finally arrived and swiftly defeated the Sahuagin army, bringing victory and peace to the town. Some time later, inside the cathedral of Akihabara, Rudy awoke. On his status board now appeared a new line subclass, Adventurer. His dream had come true. He had become someone like Isuzu, like Shiro, a true adventurer. In that joyous moment, Isuzu appeared, scolding him out of worry and anger for his reckless act. But behind her words lay relief and deep concern. Their bond had entered a new chapter. With the great victory secured, a grand ball was held to celebrate, marking a new beginning for both Eastal and the Round Table Conference. 1 month after the triumph, a festive atmosphere filled the Eternal Ice Palace, where a lavish banquet was held to honor the successful alliance between the free cities of Eastal and the Round Table Conference. Yet amidst the lively laughter and celebration, Akatsuki felt a quiet sadness because once again, Shiro had chosen to remain in the shadows. He had skillfully declined to attend, leaving the spotlight to Krusty, who always shone brilliantly and served as the perfect representative in such grand occasions. Inside the glittering hall, the feast continued in full cheer. Nayanta, Naotsugu, and the others joyfully enjoyed the exquisite dishes, the delicious fruits of their own discoveries. Outside, children were gathered around a storyteller, who skillfully wove tales of the heroic events that had just taken place, turning the fierce war into a legend of heroes, especially the story of a young man who had transcended death itself to become an adventurer, thanks to a new kind of magic created by a great mage. That mysterious mage, of course, was none other than Shiro. As Shiro passed by and happened to overhear the story, the storyteller suddenly stopped and vanished. Later, Shiro met with Ragan, not only to celebrate the victory, but also to be formally recognized for having successfully created a new type of world-class magic, a power capable of altering the laws of existence. However, Ragan also brought disturbing news. He revealed that a similar surge of immense magical energy had just been detected far to the west in the city of Minami, a region under the control of a powerful guild and protected by the Holy Empire Westaland, a nation historically connected to the Koen family. This information, combined with what Shiro had just learned about a large-scale event called the Demon Festival of the Vermilion Bird Gate taking place in the west, made him realize a startling truth. While Akihabara was gradually settling into stability, other major upheavals were quietly unfolding across the Yamato archipelago, and he had to prepare for the new challenges that could strike at any moment. Pausing amidst his stream of strategic thoughts, Shiro left and joined the party. Akatsuki soon found him, and they had a private conversation. There, Shiro sincerely expressed his gratitude to her, admitting that it was thanks to her being by his side from protecting him in every battle, gathering vital intelligence, to sharing with him his deepest secrets that he was able to come this far. His words, though somewhat clumsy, were filled with genuine sincerity, stirring Akatsuki's heart. And in that moment, as the gentle melody of the old Elder Tale theme song played, Shiro did something he had never done before. He invited Akatsuki to dance. The dance might not have been perfect, even a little awkward, but it was the clearest testament to their special bond and the respect he held for her. Meanwhile, the dance floor grew livelier as other couples joined in. Krusty and Linisha opened with an elegant waltz. Nyanta gently guided Sarara, who, after some hesitation, decided to continue dedicating herself to the Crescent Moon Alliance instead of joining Log Horizon, so she could care for new players, a decision that showed her growth and sense of responsibility. Rudy and Isusu also shared a dance of their own, marking a new beginning in their relationship. The party ended in a warm and hopeful atmosphere, not merely a celebration of victory, but also a turning point that strengthened cooperation and friendship between the two peoples. A few days later, Princess Linisha officially moved to Akihabara to assume her role as ambassador, while Shiro skillfully spread rumors about memory loss upon death. Though it initially caused some concern, it did not lead to chaos, as the community now had a renewed sense of order and trust. Life in Akihabara gradually returned to its usual rhythm, but Minori seemed to still harbor something unspoken in her heart toward her mentor. Then, as the first autumn winds began to blow, Marielle proposed holding a grand autumn festival, an idea that was immediately embraced by everyone. The bespectacled schemer presented a detailed plan for an event called the Heavenly Equinox Festival. The lively atmosphere of the Heavenly Equinox Festival soon enveloped all of Akihabara. The city's first major event since the apocalypse reignited everyone's enthusiasm. Guilds from combat to production eagerly prepared special booths and unique products, such as finely carved princess statues. Meanwhile, the Crescent Moon Alliance was equally spirited with plans for a fashion show and the return of the famous Crescent Burger brand. Amid the busyness, a side event called the All-You-Can-Eat Dessert Buffet drew considerable attention, especially from Akatsuki and Minori, two girls who quietly shared feelings for the same person. Shiro, who was still engrossed in work inside the library, surrounded by stacks of documents and strategic plans, seemingly unaware of the festive atmosphere outside. After receiving a doll resembling herself as a gift from Akatsuki, Henrietta became worried about Shiro's health and decided to visit him. She not only brought him the necessary documents, but also advised him to take some time to rest and enjoy the festival with the guild members, since Log Horizon, as part of the Round Table Conference, also bore responsibility for contributing to the event's success. After Henrietta left, Akatsuki appeared with a slightly flustered expression. She brought him sweet red bean cakes and, mustering all her courage, invited him to attend the dessert buffet with her, explaining that couples could get in for free. At the same time, Minori also arrived with a similar invitation. She explained that winning the dessert eating contest would grant 2 tickets to attend the Twilight Banquet with Princess Linisha, and she wanted everyone to see the true, kind-hearted Shiro, not the so-called bespectacled villain, as the rumors claimed. Faced with an awkward situation where both girls enthusiastically invited him, Shiro decided to go with both of them. With Henrietta and Isusu's help, both Akatsuki and Minori picked out their most beautiful outfits, an elegant kimono for Akatsuki and a cute dress for Minori in preparation for the special outing. The dessert buffet finally began, but it was nothing like what Shiro had imagined. He not only had to endure the pressure of people's curious stares, but also the overwhelming enthusiasm of both Akatsuki and Minori, who kept feeding him cakes one after another, putting him in an extremely awkward situation. After that tense battle, they left the cafe, and Minori quietly slipped away first to give the two of them some private space. Upon returning to his office, Shiro couldn't stop thinking about his role as a guild master, and decided he needed to spend more time with his members. While lost in thought, he encountered Akatsuki again. They had a brief conversation, and during that moment, Akatsuki, perhaps unintentionally, acted a bit affectionately toward Shiro. This was witnessed by Minori, who was just about to bring tea to him. Startled, she quickly turned away. In a burst of jealousy, she impulsively thought that Shiro belonged to her, but she soon realized her mistake and ran off in tears. Toya found his sister sobbing uncontrollably. He wasn't surprised to learn that she liked Shiro. It was, in fact, quite obvious. He comforted Minori, telling her that liking someone wasn't a bad thing, and that even though it hurt, she hadn't done anything wrong. His gentle words calmed her down, and Minori realized she hadn't lost yet, that there were still many things she could do to pursue her feelings. On the second day of the Heavenly Equinox Festival, Akihabara grew even livelier and more festive. Each member of Log Horizon had their own plans. Naotsugu busied himself with his food safety inspection that was clearly an excuse to eat. Isuzu and Redi enjoyed the festival together like a real couple, and Toya helped out at the Crescent Moon Alliance booth. Meanwhile, Shiro was still buried in paperwork, and only Minori had her own plans. However, the first signs of trouble also began to appear as cultural and social differences between the adventurers and the people of the land started to surface. While enjoying street food, Naotsugu and Akatsuki had to intervene in a dispute between a merchant from the people of the land and an adventurer. A visibly tired Henrietta was rushing to prepare for a fashion show, not forgetting to assign Akatsuki the role of model, while Lanisha, as an ambassador, was gradually adapting to her new duties and preparing for the Twilight Banquet. Meanwhile, Minori was diligently assisting Karashin at the Crafting Guild Council office, which was overwhelmed with an enormous workload. There, she demonstrated remarkable improvement since becoming Shiro's student. With her apprentice scribe skill, she efficiently organized and processed the mountain of documents, proving that becoming Shiro's pupil had been the right choice. It was not only a way for her to be more useful to the guild and Akihabara, but also a step forward on her own path, a path she had chosen for herself. Yet, amid the festive atmosphere, the signs of a far greater conspiracy were beginning to quietly emerge. The merchant stalls run by the people of the land, especially those from the western regions, began causing trouble. They deliberately started quarrels and made unreasonable demands to disrupt the festival's order, from insisting on monopolizing limited edition goods to purposely blocking pathways and creating congestion. Everything appeared to be part of a deliberately orchestrated plan. Even though Shiro was still in his office, he sensed something unusual through the constant stream of security reports being sent in. Then, a call from Minori clarified everything. While processing documents, she had discovered something strange. A large number of festival registration forms submitted by the people of the land contained numerous basic errors, mistakes that no ordinary merchant would ever make. Shiro immediately realized this was no coincidence, but a deliberate attack on the young economy and fragile social order of Akihabara. The enemy was using innocent people as tools to create chaos. As he was trying to piece the clues together, another report arrived. A mysterious ship had docked, carrying a noble from the west, Lord Malves, who was now entering Akihabara. With an ominous feeling, Shiro understood that he had been careless and that the enemy now held the initiative. A war without weapons, yet no less dangerous, was about to erupt in the heart of Akihabara. As the Heavenly Equinox Festival entered its second day, Akihabara was completely engulfed in a sea of people, creating an unprecedentedly lively scene. However, alongside the excitement came a series of continuous incidents throughout the city, from petty arguments and traffic accidents to baseless complaints. All of them shared one thing in common. the involvement of people of the land from other regions. These disruptions were gradually causing disorder and confusion within the festival. Though Shiro wasn't physically present, he closely monitored every development from his office. Through analysis, he uncovered a troubling truth: around 15% of the temporary population was responsible for over 60% of the disturbances, and a large portion of them came from the west. This further supported his hypothesis that it was a deliberate assault aimed at undermining the Round Table Conference's credibility, and perhaps even sabotaging the cooperation treaty between Eastal and Akihabara. Meanwhile, Princess Lanisha, busy preparing for the Twilight Banquet, a major diplomatic event, also received news of the sudden arrival of Lord Malves, a powerful noble from Westland. She sensed a potential threat, but still decided to receive him with full courtesy, as her main goal was to strengthen ties with the adventurers. Realizing the situation was becoming increasingly complex, Shiro decided to take action. Yet he understood that canceling the festival or openly confronting the issue would only worsen matters. That was exactly what the enemy wanted. Therefore, he chose a different path: a silent but effective counterattack. He didn't need swords or weapons. What he needed was information and people capable of gathering and processing it swiftly. Minori was assigned as the communication hub, tasked with collecting and compiling all incident reports. It was by no means an easy mission, but she gladly accepted it. This was her chance to prove her abilities and show that she truly deserved to be Shiro's student. She viewed it as her own battlefield, one where she would fight with intellect and dedication to protect what her mentor had built. At the Crafting Guild Council office, which had been converted into a temporary command center, Minori quickly demonstrated her capability. Applying Shiro's tactical lessons to information management, she treated the warehouse clerks handling numerous complaints as the front line, Karashin and the others resolving complex issues as the healers, and herself as the steadfast rearguard supporting everyone from behind. But even though Shiro had an effective information gathering system, he still felt stuck. The enemy's disruptive actions seemed to follow no pattern at all. They were too random, too meaningless. From blocking roads, spreading absurd rumors, and arguing over trivial reasons to ridiculous pranks like ordering a massive number of pizzas with no recipient or scattering rubber cockroaches everywhere, everything seemed like a purposeless mess. It was this randomness that made Shiro deeply uncomfortable. But then, a chance encounter with Saojiro brought a spark of inspiration. Saojiro told him about how he once dealt with a confectionery shop by mobilizing all his female fans to eat there until the store ran out of cakes, a completely unplanned, spontaneous act done purely on impulse. And Shiro realized that to deal with chaos, sometimes the best way was to fight chaos with another kind of chaos, a controlled one. Immediately, Shiro mobilized a special force, more than 20 squads composed entirely of Saojiro's fangirls. They were assigned to patrol the city, motivated by a very simple but extremely effective reason: the chance to be close to their idol. This fangirl army, with their enthusiasm and social charm, quickly and efficiently resolved small disputes, from lovers' quarrels to minor conflicts, and more importantly, their mere presence made troublemakers back down. The situation was reversed, but the battle was not yet over. Shiro knew that the true mastermind had not yet revealed himself, and that his final target was Princess Lanisha, who was attending the Twilight Banquet. Without hesitation, he temporarily handed command to Nyanta and rushed to the Watermaple residence. There, he confronted Lord Malves, who was arrogantly pressuring Lanisha about a mysterious shipment. Just as the tension peaked, Shiro stepped forward with a mysterious smile. He had come to take his princess. Amid the orchestrated chaos of the Scale Festival, Shiro finally came face to face with the one behind it all, Lord Malves of Westland. He appeared unexpectedly at the Twilight Banquet alongside Michitaka and Krusty, key members of the Round Table Conference, shattering Malves's plan to intimidate Princess Lanisha. With a mix of sarcasm and firmness, Shiro pretended to place all the blame on Lanisha, claiming that her forgetfulness caused the confusion in preparing the storage for Malves's precious seafood shipment, and that he, as her ally, would take responsibility on her behalf. Though Lanisha was initially confused, she quickly grasped Shiro's intention and played along. However, Shiro's real trump card lay elsewhere. He had forged a letter with Malves's signature addressed to the Round Table, serving as undeniable proof that the warehouse preparation was the Round Table's duty, not the princess's. When Malves demanded the storage, Shiro signaled for Michitaka to deliver the finishing blow. Michitaka announced that although the Round Table's warehouse was full, The Ocean Guild's private warehouse with 10 times the required capacity was ready and available to move the shipment immediately. Faced with such a flawless setup and an uncounterable move, Lord Malves had no choice but to feign illness and retreat in humiliation. His scheme had been completely exposed and destroyed. Shiro successfully rescued Lanisha from the awkward situation, but he did not forget his original goal to use the Twilight Banquet as a way to strengthen the relationship between the adventurers and the people of the land. He turned the banquet into a public event, inviting the princess onto the stage to interact with everyone, an act that both showed respect and created a valuable opportunity to break down barriers between the two sides, and to ensure everything proceeded smoothly. He deliberately played the villain, paving the way for Krusty to become the hero in the eyes of Lanisha and the public. This was a self-sacrificing strategy for the greater good, something Minori and Akatsuki could never truly understand, and it planted within them a complex mix of emotions. Minori felt heartbroken seeing her teacher misunderstood, while Akatsuki was filled with regret for not being by his side to share his burden. And then, in a moment of stillness, a fateful encounter occurred. Nuriha, the guild master of Plant Hyaden and ruler of the entire western city of Minami, suddenly appeared before Shiro. She came with a tempting offer inviting Shiro to join her guild and rule the world together, but it was also a threat. She revealed that she knew everything about him, from his creation of new magic to his deepest secrets. She even claimed to have discovered a method to return to the real world, a loophole capable of making someone disappear. She gave Shiro a choice: either go with her and seek a way back home, or stay and continue his meaningless struggle. Though shaken, Shiro refused. He asserted that he had a reason to stay: his friends, his comrades with whom he had built this world together. He could not use them as an excuse to run away. Shiro's rejection did not anger Nuriha. Instead, she smiled and declared that one day, he would belong to her. Then she vanished, leaving Shiro with a vague unease about the future. When the festival ended, everyone in Log Horizon gathered together, enjoying their final moments of peace. And as Shiro looked at his friends, he found his answer. The next goal of Log Horizon was no longer just rebuilding a city or finding a way home, it was something far greater. They would change the world. And with that resolve, the first season of Log Horizon came to a close, opening the door to a new and promising chapter. Farewell.